Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. In this video we swap out the water pump and then put everything back together. And I do use fast forward quite a bit and move through this quite quickly, but you should get all the steps that you need to get everything back together correctly. And here's a quick reminder of the tools you'll need. Okay, we'll pick up where we left off. In the first video we had just pulled off the old belt. Okay, the water pump is held in by 6 bolts, 3 up top, 3 down at the bottom. And we'll very much fast forward through removing those. My head's blocking it here, but a large screwdriver. Pry the top driver's side of the water pump and it comes off. Okay, use some paper towels, soak up some of the coolant that's sitting at the bottom so it doesn't leak down, and then just wipe down the surface for the gasket to seal. Okay, new water pump from 1AAuto. Might as well do this while we have it all apart. Lightly press that O-ring in, press it down, it stays in place. The long bolt goes in the top left. Okay, and this bolt down here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lightly thread that one in. Okay. I'm going to check my gasket, make sure it's all seated correctly. I'm going to push this one in. I'm going to push my pump right against the housing. And hold it there and thread these bolts in. Okay, and speed it up here as I thread all the rest of the bolts in. And then I'll use a 10mm socket and a ratchet to lightly tighten them. I've torqued these bolts to 110 inch-pounds. And that was 110 inch-pounds, not 110 foot-pounds, 110 inch-pounds, which is about 9 foot-pounds. Using kind of a crossing pattern. Here's a 15mm bolt holding your tensioner pulley on. Okay, speed up as we remove that nut and the pulley. Okay, kit from 1AAuto comes with a new tensioner pulley. Okay, speed up as we tighten that up and torque it anywhere between 45 and 55 foot-pounds. Now just wipe down or remove any extra coolant that spilled out of the water pump. Shouldn't really be any coolant in there. Okay, new belt. We're going to feed it around. I'm going to pull it tight down to your crank here. Okay, I'm going to take an 18mm wrench here. And I'm going to turn this camshaft just a slight bit towards the crank so that there's a little bit of slack in the belt there. I'm going to do the same thing. This one's already turned just a little bit. Okay. So now it's on there. And as our tensioner tightens up, it should pull those both back. Okay, so my position is that's at or just slightly beyond top dead center. And then my marks here on the camshafts are at my second mark here. Okay, kit from 1A Auto comes with a new tensioner as well. Okay, you leave the pin in there, slide it up into place. Okay, fast forward here. You want to evenly tighten those bolts, so tighten one some, tighten the other side some, and keep alternating back and forth. Once the tensioner kind of comes in contact with the pivoting part of the pulley, then you can pull the pin out, and then from there you want to get it up in there and tighten those bolts to about between 25 and 30 foot-pounds. Okay, now you want to rotate the engine clockwise. The tensioner should take effect. Okay, and basically you want to turn the crankshaft, which is the lower sprocket, you want to turn that over twice, which should turn the cams over once. Okay, so after rotating the engine, okay, I'm right on top dead center there, between the marks there perfectly, and here, it looks like we might be just a tooth off actually, and I'll show you how to fix that. Okay, and we'll kind of speed through this. What you do is you loosen up the tensioner. You basically you back the bolts off evenly, take one of them all the way out, then re-thread it in 2 or 3 turns. Same thing with the other one. And now you pull the belt off of that sprocket and turn it just a little bit, so you can basically turn it one tooth on the belt. And then put the belt back on. Get it back onto the tensioner. And then evenly tighten the bolts for the tensioner back up, and torque them each to 20 to 25 foot-pounds. I'm sorry, 25 to 30 foot-pounds. Okay, so after that adjustment, I'm top dead center there, I'm right in between there, and I'm right in between there. Okay, use a little old school impact to get that bolt off, and then we're going to put our cast cover back on. Once I get the bolt out here, put the cast cover back on, start the bolts, and then put the stamped steel cover on and start those bolts as well. Okay, tighten these bolts up. Be very careful. You only want these anywhere between 9 and 11 foot-pounds, not very tight. You don't want to strip the aluminum. Okay, and you can see here, even though I used the machine to tighten them most of the way, I just check them by hand, make sure they're on there tight, but again, not too tight. Okay, now we'll put our crankshaft pulley back on, thread the bolt in, tighten it up as much as you can until the engine starts spinning. And then we'll use our chain, rope, or strap, wrench, whatever you want to call it. And this bolt you want to tighten 80 to 85 foot-pounds. Moving along here, put our tensioner pulley back on, the 3 13mm bolts, tighten them preliminarily first, and then follow up, and you want to make sure these are tight between 25 and 30 foot-pounds. Put the AC V-belt into place, and put the grooved serpentine belt back into place. Okay, here as we start to put the radiator in, a few things to check. Make sure that you tighten the drain plug before you put it back in. Check to see that the clips are there where the bolts go through the AC condenser into the radiator. Make sure those clips are in place. And also, now's a good time to replace your radiator fan. And just put it down into place. Make sure you don't get any of the hoses or anything caught down in there. I actually did when I was putting it in. One of the longer hose, the longer transmission line hose got caught underneath, and I had to kind of pull it up and out and back in. But get it down and into place. And once I get one side into place, I start one of the bolts. Make sure I get the other side into place, and then I'll start the other bolt and go from there. Okay, now we take that bracket that held the line that goes up to the condenser on the inside, push that back over, and then put the bolt back in and tighten that up, and then tighten the little nut that held the bracket. And then moving along, tighten up the front two radiator mount bolts as well. Reinstall the upper transmission cooler line and tighten up the clamp with a screwdriver. Okay, use a pair of pliers, squeeze the clamp and reconnect the upper radiator hose. And then if you didn't quite install that bracket correct, like I didn't do, just take a quick second and fix it. Okay, at this point you can put that top brace back in place. Use my impact wrench just to tighten them preliminarily, and then follow up with a regular wrench to make sure that they're tight, but not too tight. Okay, start in the bolts that hold the condenser to the radiator. Okay, start the lower one on the other side, and then I start the upper one. And obviously you want to tighten up those 4 bolts. Then shifting underneath, put the lower transmission cooler line on and tighten up the clamp. Okay, now you want to reconnect your lower radiator hose and use your pliers. Pinch the clamp to open it up. Guide the hose and the clamp on there at the same time. You may have to release the clamp and reposition a couple times just to make sure you get the hose fully on and the clamp in the right position. Okay, long extension and your 13mm socket, and tighten up that tensioner bolt until your belt's at the right tension. Okay, you only want an 1/8 to 1/4 inch of slack. You can see right here that's a little too loose. We're going to tighten it up a little more. Okay, so same thing for that AC V belt. Tighten it up. You want to have about 1/4 inch of slack. Means you can press the belt up and down 1/4 inch. Then go underneath 15mm socket. Tighten up the nut on the pulley and reconnect your radiator fan. Okay, back up top, 15mm wrench, just tighten up the nut on the tensioner pulley. Okay, here obviously we're going to reconnect the battery and tighten up the cable. And now before we fill it with fluid, we're just going to start the car up real quick, make sure everything with the timing belt's good. Okay, so once the car runs a little bit, it sucks in some more of the fluid, so top it off, and you'll want to just kind of keep doing this as you drive it for the first few 100 miles. Just check the coolant every once in a while, make sure it's at the appropriate level, and you should be all set. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.1aauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.